All right.
Okay, CZ, GM, thanks for coming on the pod.
Good morning. Thanks for having me here.
Welcome. Let's start this way. We like to have a little bit of fun here and not be all business. Let's get a little meta and talk about the fact that you're doing this interview with us. You know, just recently, as we record this, just recently, you were on the cover of Business Week, and there was some talk in the story about you lately doing more press, and then it was interesting to see your tweets about the story. Has your feeling about doing the press and the media circuit changed at all? I mean, do you hate doing this, like doing this?
No, like my feeling doesn't change. Just one slightly misquoted article, one switch and bait doesn't change. I think all like 99% of the journalists, podcasters, KOLs I meet are fantastic people. So in fact, I'm doing more of that just to dilute some of the negative pieces. So once in a while, you'll get a guy who have a negative narrative. But that's a very minority of people. So I think we meet a lot of great journalists, a lot of good podcasters that help to spread this industry around. So that's very important.
Let's go all the way back to your first moment when you caught the crypto bug. I mean, I think by now most of our listeners, and I know we know it, know your kind of resume and the order in which you worked at certain companies and launched certain companies. But do you actually remember the first moment that you heard of or learned about crypto?
Yeah. Well, I also talked about this a few times. I learned it on a poker table from Bobby Lee and Ron Cao. Bobby Lee was the CEO of BTC China. So at the time he wasn't. He was becoming that. So he mentioned that on a poker table. And yeah, since then I got more and more intrigued. And that's how I started. Yeah.
Nice. And then CZ, I'm Stacy Elliott. Thank you for being here today. So I wanted to ask you about the 5-year anniversary. That's actually tomorrow. Is that right? As we're talking? Okay.
Yeah.
So I listened to your Twitter space earlier today. As you said, you have been doing a lot more of those and kind of doing more outreach. I wanted to ask you, because you said something on there that I thought was really interesting, that, there's a lot more opportunities for business during a bear market than a bull market. So, you're moving into like the next phase for Binance. You're 5 years old now. What do you want to see Binance build during this bear market?
So I think Binance is no longer a top-down driven from me. So I don't really decide what products to build, what to do, what not to do, especially products features. So I just set a general direction. We just want to build more tools for people to access Web3, blockchain, cryptocurrencies. So that's the general direction. We have, I don't know, depending on how you count it, we have 30 to 50 or 200 different products in the Binance ecosystem that's using BNB chain, centralized exchanges, decentralized wallets. I can't decide which direction to go. Just guys, let's just build tools that people can use. So it's a much more bottom-up, grassroots kind of approach where different teams are working on different things, and they have freedoms to experiment. And sometimes they just build things, and many times actually they do build things that people use. So we have one of the most downloaded crypto mobile wallet, Trust Wallet. We now own one of the most visited websites in crypto, coinmarketcaps.com, which is for people to access information. Of course, we have a centralized exchange, and we contribute to the BNB chain ecosystem. I think all of those things are very interesting. So I'm not a very detailed, hands-on product kind of guy. So we just give them opportunities for our teams to develop.
Okay. So the word's not coming from you. Guys, I want you to build this next. So then let me kind of flip that. What are you hearing from the team and the communities that they think they need to be in the ecosystem?
Well, I think there's a few different things. Today, I believe on the centralized exchange, where people want to see more security, more stability, especially in this sort of bear markets. Mm-hmm. They want to see more innovative projects getting listed, etc. In the industry side, I think wallets still is a big bottleneck for the industry. So for us to go fully decentralized, everybody hold their cryptos on their own. I think we need better wallet technologies. We make it easier for people to store their backups, their backup like private keys, seeds. If they eventually become unavailable at some point. How do they pass those assets to their kids? So a solution like this don't really exist yet. I know a bunch of people who are working on it. We're investing very heavily in these areas. So all of this are very interesting. It doesn't have to be fully related to the centralized exchange. The rest are but most of the time, the community feedback are very specific, very small. They usually don't give you big product ideas. So those are usually like adjustments. On big product ideas, you really need the entrepreneurs to go and try and fail and try, and then, maybe fail 10 times and succeed once.
Let's stick with the bear market, CZ, and specifically on the note of centralized exchanges and the competition there. It was wild to me, having formerly covered sports business and crypto, and now all crypto, but seeing exchanges like yours and Coinbase and Crypto.com and FTX all rush into sports marketing spending. And that appeared to be the area that everyone decided is where we should spend for brand name recognition when things were good. Now we're in a crypto bear market. And it was interesting, in at least Coinbase's announcement of layoffs coming, Coinbase acknowledged we overhired. And I kind of thought, well, yeah, overhired, and maybe you overspent on marketing as well. What's your take on sort of that competitive race for name brand recognition and what's going to happen next because of the bear market among exchanges?
Sure. I think when you said everyone was rushing, I think we were a little bit slow in that race. So we didn't really rush to, we didn't name stadiums. We did less sponsorship. We didn't sponsor Super Bowls, etc. So we were a little bit slow in that race, which is actually not a negative. It actually gave us more cash now. So we're recently just starting in the bear market. Now we signed Cristiano Ronaldo, who is the most followed person on the planet. He has 450 million followers on Instagram alone. And so now we're doing we just signed Kabi Lama, and another very famous TikToker or YouTuber. So we're just starting. So we were a little bit slow before, and that may or may not be deliberate. In bull markets we are quite cautious about spending. In bear markets now, we do have the reserves. So now we're using our reserves to sign partnerships, to do hiring, to do investments, acquisitions, sometimes even some bailouts. Not all companies are worth bailing out, but of the ones that's worth it, we're doing that. We're also lowering our fees because we have the stamina to last. So that this way we can ease the pain ease the friction on some of for our users. So we're doing a number of those things. We like to do things off cycle. We believe that in the bear markets is when you should invest, and in bull markets you should actually be more cautious. So we kind of took that approach a little bit, not fully deliberately, but we always knew. For me, this is my third bear cycle. So personally, so I've been through a couple of this. Once you've been through a couple of this and you run a business, you will be more conservative doing bull markets when everyone's really crazy and hot, and thinking that things will just go forever up. You're a little bit more cautious. So we always held more cash reserves than most other industry players. But there's no right or wrong strategy. But we'll just see how it goes. Yeah.
And then I want to touch on the note, or the fact that we mentioned just now, bailouts in the market. And, as we're going into this bear market, we have seen a couple of bailouts, notably coming from FTX and going out to some of the firms that are struggling right now, like BlockFi and Voyager. You did put up a blog post not too long ago kind of describing the way you look at it, that there's 3 different kinds of companies and some of them just are not worth saving. But a lot has happened since then. I mean, just before we got on, I was trying to write a story about Celsius, So I want to ask, has your thinking on that changed at all? And, are we going to see any quote unquote bailouts from Binance during this bear market?
We're looking. Well, so first of all, the word bailout has a specific meaning, but different people may attach different meanings to it. But it basically means helping companies that are short on cash, mostly. But in the real world, there's a spectrum of things. It's not black and white. Many companies are short on money. Doesn't mean most of the bad companies. The companies that does not have product market fit, that's poorly managed. Those things should not be propagated. Those things should not be bailed out. So that's one extreme. And the good companies, of course, they have no trouble raising money, and we would love to invest. And there's somewhere in the middle where, some companies make minor mistakes. The first time going through a bear market, they have good products, good teams, etc. So we just got to help them out a bit. And those things we're perfectly willing to do. And we're looking at a high number of deals like that. I think, the U.S. companies make more noise because of there's Three Arrows. Technically, they're based in Singapore, but then their investors or people who loan them money, like Celsius, Voyager, all of those companies are kind of in the U.S. So there's quite a lot of stuff happening in the U.S. But there's also a lot of very great companies who are struggling outside of the U.S. and we're also quite active on those fronts. So we're active on the global front. And while deals are going on, we observe confidentiality quite strongly. We don't talk about in-progress deals. So this is why, but we have a large number of deals that we're looking at. And some of them are actually good deals. So I think you will see that we'll be investing, bailing out, saving multiple projects.
Wow. It's interesting to hear you differentiate between the types of companies that deserve to be helped. What I would differentiate between are the high yield lenders that were promising big interest payouts to people. Celsius is in there, BlockFi is in there. Of course, each one tried to say, well, we're different from the other guys. Stacy has written some great stuff recently about how Nexo, which has a similar business model, is saying we're financially healthy, we're different. We'll see if that's the case. But what is your take, CZ, on those companies specifically and kind of who's to blame? Because as we discussed earlier, and as you and I and Stacy all know, this is such a narrative-driven industry. And so the collapse of some of these companies allows many crypto skeptics who already have thought for years, all of crypto is a scam and a fraud, to kind of point and say, see. And now they're being taken by many critics as representative of the whole industry, which isn't the case. But in some of these cases, it's like, well, yeah, it always looked too good to be true. If they were saying 9%, 10% yield for depositing your crypto, who kind of should have known better?
Yeah. So to be honest, it's very difficult to sort of generalize and sort of comment who's good and who's bad, because of course, when things are going well, if you're a project that only gives 2% yield, and then this other project gives 10% yield, guess what? You're going to lose users. And then there's a herd behavior. If somebody else is doing this, I got to do this to stay competitive. And is that right or wrong? And then some people are just unlucky that the timing just happened. They don't have cash. Some people are lucky that they have cash reserve. So there's luck involved. There's bad decisions, good decisions involved. There's peer pressure. There's herd mentality. All of those things are in play. But fundamentally, when we look at a project to say, hey, do we want to save this project or not? We need to look at does this project have a sound team? Do they really have product market fit? Are they savable? Like some projects, you can give them $1 billion and they will just wipe through that, and that's obviously not good. So this it's not a black and white science mathematical formula that you can calculate in each case. Quite a lot of that are based on subjective feelings, etc. So, but to your second point, unfortunately, this does allow many of the skeptics about the industry to create this narrative, which is very unfortunate. But there's still many strong projects that are going even stronger in this bear market in this industry. So if we looked at internet, a bunch of e-commerce companies failed. Webvan, diapers.com, a bunch of those guys. But guess what? Amazon is one of the most valuable companies in the world today. So just because there's a few failures doesn't mean the industry, the technology, or all the companies are bad. So we just gotta keep our heads down. We just gotta keep building, and we just gotta provide more users with more tools that they want to use. And then when our users continue to grow, people will say, hey, wait a second. There are a few companies that are still growing in this bear market. And hopefully I always think that building great products is the best way to counter any FUD, any negative skepticism, etc. Just be successful, and then all those other things go away.
I want to kind of go back to the comment you made, comparing, some of what's going on to, some of the retailers that have failed, and then, Amazon is still here. I was covering Amazon, years ago when they were kind of in their acquisition spree. And we are seeing a lot of talk right now that, FTX and some of the other companies that are bailing others out are going to acquire them and come out of this bear season bigger, stronger, just with more verticals underneath them. Would you have made those deals like the ones we saw over at Blackfire Voyager?
I couldn't comment. We obviously we look at some of those deals. We so far have not engaged in those specific deals that you mentioned. So obviously we did not engage. We did not fully engage. But it's not to say the deals are right or wrong. The deals that doesn't work for one acquirer may work for a different acquirer because they have a different business, they have a different focus, they have a different philosophy, they have a different market, they have a different mindset. Some people, some exchanges want to go back to stock trading, target that market. That's again not a wrong or right approach. We are a pure Web3 company. We don't want to. We're not going back. We're moving forward. We want to build more Web3 tools. So there's different strategies that make different deals work for different parties or not. There are also geographic considerations, user-based overlap considerations. If it's a company that we already have very high user overlap, then there's no point for us to invest or acquire that company. We already have all those users. So there's many different type of considerations. There's no right or wrong. So I think any deal is done, that's done. And any platform that can be acquired or saved is generally good for users. So this means that the users doesn't lose money, well, hopefully lose less money, or doesn't have to lose money. They have a much more smooth transition onto a new platform, etc. So all of those things are good. So generally, most deals are good. Personally, for me and to a large extent for Binance, we like very simple deals. We like deals. Okay, look, what's your revenue? What's your user number? We don't like deals where, hey, I owe you this money. You pay me back this much money. You invest in me. I give you more money in loan, and then you bail me out. Why don't we just return all the money and go back to zero and talk about our net, who owes who money and who owes the guy. If I owe you money, then you owe some shares in my company. That's it. So we like those very simple deals. But again, it's not to say that complex deals are not bad. Some very complex deals are very successful. But my preference is always keep everything very simple, very straightforward, boil everything down to very basic core principles and go from there. So we look for very simple deals.
I know I keep pitting you against FTX, but I have to imagine that was at least a reference to, what just came out about them owing Voyager some money.
So that was surprising even to me, to be honest. I tried not to comment on our competitors, industry peers, but I would never do that type of deal. I would never say I would invest in a company and then you loan me some money. I would just not invest in that company. I'll keep my money. But again, nothing to say. It's not for me to judge if it's right or wrong, if it's good or bad. It might work for them, it might not. So, but it's just that we don't do those type of deals.
Well, and I was going to ask too, another FTX comparison, which is, it sounds like you're saying Binance, no interest in adding stock trading anytime soon.
No, so that's correct. So we don't have any plans on doing stock trading. We just think that we're not running a fiscal bookstore anytime soon.
Nice. And then you were talking about some of the companies that might come out of this even stronger. I thought it might be fun to ask you, what are some of the other companies, maybe 3 other crypto companies or projects that, outside the Binance ecosystem that you think are doing great or interesting or will survive and thrive this period?
I got to be a little bit careful. Number one, Win Exchange. If I say a certain few projects are going to do well, then it may impact the price. So I try not to comment on specific industry players. You guys were asking about FTX, so made a few comments, and they're an exchange. So. And then also it's a bit too early to tell. So right now I don't think I don't think we're kind of on our way to a bull market. It's not 100% clear to me that's the case or not. So I think we have to wait and see how the market reacts. Many of the deal that's going on now may or may not work out. So we still have to see. So it's very difficult to predict which company is going to do well or not well. I actually don't follow the other projects that closely myself. I'm pretty busy running Binance, and so to know that, you really have to know the intricate details, and I don't have those kind of detailed information.
Okay. And then, so I want to take a step back. I know we've talked a lot about, kind of these really high interest lenders for a bit and the bailouts. I want to switch gears and talk a bit about stablecoins. I did see you were on with the Bankless guys last week, and you mentioned during the conversation with them that Binance actually receives about 30% of its income in the form of stablecoins. But you've also famously said that, stablecoins is a bit of a misnomer and they're not really that stable. So I'm just curious to know, how do you go from that to about 30% of your income is coming in as stablecoins? How do you decide what stablecoins it's safe to actually hold your income in? Talk me through that process a little bit.
Sure. And there's no conflict. Just because almost all assets we hold are not stable, including stablecoins. So just because stablecoins is not that stable, when I say that, I mean really benchmarking against purchasing power. So even if you look at fiat currencies, most of the time the purchasing power go down over the years. So nothing is absolutely stable when you benchmark against something else. I think the most logical thing to benchmark against is purchasing power, not some other currency. So and so far, if you benchmark against purchasing power, Bitcoin, Ethereum, BNB, some of the top cryptocurrencies purchasing power have been increasing over the years significantly. So and back to stablecoins volatility is not a problem for us. So back to the stablecoins that we hold. We don't have a scientific way of managing that, to be very frank. We just, our revenue comes into many different, almost all the different coins that we support. For most of them, we just hold them. And we just happen to have, most people do like to trade against a stablecoin pair. So when you trade Bitcoin in BTC versus, BUSD, the number makes sense. The number is like 21,000. It's not 0.001 something. So the number is much easier to understand. So we do have more stablecoin trading pairs, which basically gives us more stablecoin income. So and it's okay. I think so for me, anywhere between 10% to 40% of stablecoin is probably okay. We don't have to, we're not going to be perfectly adjusting the treasury management. We don't trade, we don't sell, we don't buy and sell. We don't try to predict markets. So a very natural thing is let's just accept everything that people pay for fees with. And that actually usually works out quite fine. So we're actually very well hedged against volatilities in Bitcoin. And when Bitcoin's going up, we benefit. So it's actually a pretty interesting, it's a very simple, no work strategy. It works really well.
Okay. And then I wanted to ask about algorithmic stablecoins. Anyone who's been following the market the past few months is going to know I'm probably getting ready to talk about Terra USD. You were pretty publicly, disappointed with the way that whole thing went down and was handled. And so I want to ask, has that kind of changed the way you view perhaps accepting algorithmic stablecoins as payment for the company?
So a couple of things. I think yes, I was disappointed with the way how it was handled, and the speed of response, the frequency of communication with the community, and the speed of operational response to handle the problems, I think was quite weak. So being pretty public about it. It's one of our portfolio investee companies. So it's so we're kind of part of it in a way. So that's that. But just because one project failed doesn't mean I don't think it will mean algo stablecoins will never work. But algo stablecoins do have, I would say in general, do have higher risk than a fiat-backed stablecoin. A different type of risk, but much clearer. When you benchmark when you use one asset for collateral to peg a different asset, there's always going to be volatility. So that risk is much higher in algo stablecoins. This is not to say that fiat-backed stablecoins have no risks. There are many risks there too. Banks can freeze your money. This happened to USDT. They freeze like $600 million of USDT's money at some point. That caused a lot of issues, and luckily they recover from that. So, and then there are different levels of fiat-backed for different fiat-backed stablecoins. Some use treasury bills, some use commercial paper, some use BUSD uses a very high percentage of actual cash in the bank. So different approaches. Not to say that anyone is particularly. They just have different risk profiles. So I think as users, or as industry players, as regulators, we need to educate the masses. So we need to increase education on the users. We should be teaching people about different risks, about stablecoins, etc. in school. Right now, I don't think any school have courses cover this. So and then as users, they need to understand the different risks and decide what's good for them and what's the right portfolio for them. So I think that education part is really important. So long story, but I think just because of one failed project doesn't mean the whole thing is bad. But that one project did shine a pretty big light on some of the deficiencies or some of the higher risks in this area, which is very important for us to learn.
Yeah, we believe in education too at Decrypt, big time. CZ, let's talk about regulation, your favorite topic. You and I did one of these interviews a little over a year ago, and we talked about the pressure that's always on you and on Binance to say, where's the headquarters? Don't you have a headquarters? And this was kind of my favorite line in the Business Week story. A quote from you said, office, headquarters, parent company. At the beginning, we told them we don't have that. And of course, they all got pissed off. So over the last year, we set all that up. So did you capitulate, basically? I mean, do you still believe, as you told me, that there's no need to have a headquarters? We're a decentralized business.
Yeah, so yes, we did capitulate. And again, so in this world, so for example, when you talk about, there's so many words that have somewhat ambiguous meanings, but people get used to them and they will think a certain way. For example, a company is just a group of guys who work together with a certain agreed structure, different agreements on compensation, etc. Headquarter, what does that mean? Does that mean the office where the senior management are? Does it mean a company registration where you pay taxes? All of these things. And when we started, 5 years ago, there was very little regulatory frameworks. And in fact, most of the regulators we spoke to, they clearly just said, like 3-4 years ago, when we spoke to Singapore AMS, they clearly told us, we don't regulate this industry. You're off. We're not involved. So back in those days, we were embracing the decentralized philosophy, and it worked really well for us. We can hire talent globally, and people don't have to waste time traveling, stuck in commuting. They can work, and we run a 24/7 exchange, and having people globally in different time zones covers that. We always have somebody who's awake and who's looking at the community, who's looking at systems. That worked beautifully. But then, as you know, when you talk with regulators, the regulators' first question is, "Where's your headquarters? Where's your office? Where's your local staff?" And that makes sense. Look, they come from this background that, over the last 70, 90, 100 years, they formed this customs or this rules. So they expect you have a local MARO, your local compliance, you have a local building that people can go and complain. You have to have local people who are legal representatives. And we said, look, if we want this, what's the best way forward for this industry, for us to help this industry grow as a centralized business, as a centralized exchange? The best way is to give them that structure. So we set up local offices, local entities, hire local compliance, legal, this whole structure. But today we still have a large number of people, engineers, customer support that works remotely in a distributed fashion. And so we have a hybrid of those two. And when people ask about our headquarters, offices, etc., we now have offices in Dubai, Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, France, Paris, Italy. So we have the structure set up now. So now we satisfy both sides. It's actually fantastic.
What is the answer now if they say, where's the headquarters? Is there one answer?
If it's if we're in France, we say, look, right here in Paris, our building is right beside the traditional Bourse building. And if we're talking about the Middle East, we have two: is Bahrain and Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So yeah, so now people can go to the nearest office, and if they have an issue, they can find us, they can talk to us. So it works now.
Yeah. While you were describing kind of, we're global, crypto is global, you want to have someone in every time zone. I mean, we're quite frankly, Decrypt is the same. We have people in many time zones. There is technically a mailing address to somewhere in Wyoming, but I'm not sure we actually have anyone physically in Wyoming. We're kind of spread out all over the place. So I wanted to ask specifically about Dubai because I know that's where it sounds like most recently you're doing a lot of hiring. Is it a couple of hundred people you have there now? And is there any kind of focus? Like what all is that team going to be working on Dubai? What does the Dubai team do?
Yeah, so I think 9 months ago, when I first went to Dubai, we had about 3 people there. Today, I think we're coming up to 600 people there. So we brought a couple hundred people there, and then we hired the rest. And Dubai is a very nice place to live. It's very modern, very established, extremely safe. It's probably one of the safest cities in the world. It's got all the international restaurants, bars, nice lifestyle culture, and what else? And it's also very good time zone. It's in the middle of, it overlaps with America, Europe, Asia time zones. Easy to fly everywhere too. So and on top of that, the government is very pro innovation. They understand they cannot rely on oil forever. They need to develop new fintech industries. They're very pro innovation, pro blockchain. So having all of that is fantastic. So we just grown the headcount there very quickly. And we'll continue to invest very heavily ourselves. We also, last time 9 months ago when I was there was like maybe 2 or 3 crypto companies there, and they're not that big. And then today there's probably a couple hundred crypto companies there. And we organized a blockchain conference, 5,000 people attended. It's just a fantastic place. So we'll continue to, so Dubai is great, and we'll continue to invest heavily there. Same with our other locations, Bahrain, Paris, Italy, etc. So wherever we get licenses, wherever we have a base, we double down, we invest, and we also want to help to attract the ecosystem there. And we're quite good at that because we have a bit of a magnet effect in the industry. I can go into that if you guys are interested.
Well, you say Bahrain and France and Dubai, and it's interesting. I mean, no American cities in there, and FTX is over in the Bahamas. Talk to us a little bit about the status of things in the U.S. and what about with Binance US, which I know for a while you had some real grand plans with, maybe even a U.S. IPO. Is the U.S. really at risk of having the strictest regulations and thus keeping companies out?
No, I don't think US is behind. So different countries are forward in different aspects. Binance US, the US entity in Binance, or for Binance, they got 4 new state licenses in the last 6 months. So they're getting new licenses in the US. So I forgot to mention that because we kind of cover them out mentally and legally. So include Louisiana, some of the bigger states actually. So some of the states that takes longer to get licenses. Binance US has like 45, 46 state licenses in the US. So and they're still getting the last few remaining. I think they're still missing 2 or 3 licenses. So they're getting new licenses, and that's a very strong stamp of approval, and also embracing regulations. And the number of users is growing. It's a very healthy business. So Binance US is doing fantastic. And we had a little bit of issue last year with some personnel issues. We changed some personnel, but now it's stabilized. It's fantastic. So it's not like we're neglecting the US. I don't spend much time on the US myself, but Binance US does have very good presence there. And speaking of the regulations in the US, US has actually one of the best banking supports for cryptocurrency exchanges anywhere in the world. So in the US, cryptocurrency exchanges like Binance US, Coinbase can deduct from users' bank accounts automatically every month, giving the users one-time approval through the ACH protocol. I think Korea has something similar. Most other countries don't have this level of integration for banking support to cryptocurrency exchanges. So I think that's a fantastic thing. US is more strict on yield generating products, interest generating products, futures, etc. So they're more restrictive on those type of product offerings. So different countries a little bit different. It's not to say one is more there's no it's not clear one place is globally better or better in every aspect than other places. So and US is also quite interesting given that there's a lot of focus on US. U.S. is very divided, right? So U.S. has so many different political parties, so many different agencies, etc. And even in the Senate, you can see that some senators are very pro-innovation. Some senators want to let's protect the U.S. dollar to the maximum for the longest time, for as long as we can, and then not have the next thing. Or maybe they don't realize that would not have the next thing. So, but this debate, it's a democracy. So, so it's kind of interesting to see different. So I wouldn't say U.S. is completely behind. U.S. is strict on a few areas, but they're also advancing in a few other areas.
Nice. So I want to go back to the headquarters thing one more time, because it sounds like you've gone from no, we don't have a headquarters to the answer to that question is kind of, it depends. It depends on where you are. So it sounds like we've gone from no, we don't have one to not really having one answer. Is there going to be a time when there is one answer, where there is going to be a main headquarters that, that's the answer, and then you mention all the other offices?
We have a global holding company. So we have a global holding entity. For the centralized exchange. So it's that simple.
And
is that entity
registered?
Singapore?
We haven't announced it yet, so we will announce that in due time. But it's very simple. Yeah, it's not that complicated. Yeah.
Feel free to break some news here on the GM podcast.
I know we've been hitting the headquarters. Yeah, I know I've been hitting the headquarters thing a lot, but I started covering crypto a year ago, and I think then is when we started hearing about you guys were looking around for a headquarters. So. For me, it feels like I've been waiting a year to find out the answer to this question,
These things take time. So the reason we wait is we're communicating with many different regulators around different parts of the world, and we want to make sure that we just provide one answer and not change that later on, etc. So so that's why we're being extremely cautious about it. But we're very public about where we are physically. So it's quite easy to find us now. The headquarters, what you're looking for is really just the global holding entity. That's it, really. Yeah. And to be honest, today, registering a company is quite, at least in my understanding, is quite straightforward.
Right. Cece, this has been great. I mean, there's so much more we'd love to ask you, but let's go back. Let's end full circle on something fun about you. Stacy actually discovered this recent post from you about simulation theory. You believe in simulation theory. And it's interesting. Recently that seems to be a hot topic in fiction. I've read 2 novels in a row this summer that are both about the idea that we are living in a simulation. Talk to us about that.
Which books did you read? I might want to read them.
Yeah, it was The Anomaly, which is this French novel that I guess a year ago was like the talk of the French literary scene. I didn't love it. And then there was the new Emily St. John Mandel novel. She wrote Station 11, which is a show right now. Her newest novel is called Sea of Tranquility and is also about simulation theory.
Okay. All right. I haven't read those. I'll give them a read. Yeah. I mean, I do. Yeah. So as I explained in that blog post, I do believe we live in a simulation, but just because of that, it doesn't mean that we should not take things seriously. Life is still very meaningful. Work is still very meaningful. We still got to take all of these things very seriously. But it does take a little bit of an edge off when you're dealing with higher pressure situations. Part of the simulation, some things are programmed, you can't change them. Some things have some randomness to it, and there's an element of luck. I've been super lucky already. I mean, if you're not in a simulation, no one gets this lucky. So so I'm very grateful for that, and we just got to make the best out of this simulation.
I do have actually 2 follow-up questions, because you said you hadn't read those books that Dan mentioned. What have you read recently? I'm curious to know.
I've been reading, let me see. I've been reading a bunch of random things. I've been reading the Amazon book, Working Backwards, the Amazon story, which is a fantastic read. For any entrepreneur out there, I would highly recommend that book. I'm reading it the second time. Also reading the book called Molecule of More, talk about dopamine. I just started, so I'm not sure how good it is. A Crack in Creation, talk about biotech, CRISPR-9. It's about genetic editing, some stuff. Let me see. Cloud Money is pretty good. Reading the culture map is great. We're now working globally, how different cultures can work together. etc. No filter, the Instagram story, which is also quite interesting. The ugly truth about it's kind of a nasty book about Facebook. I'm not sure how much of it is real. It talks about, gives you ideas on what to avoid, some of the pitfalls. So yeah, all kind of random books. I have a 50 book recommendation list internally for Binance, and publish about a public list about 10, 20 of them.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Yeah.
Who created the simulation, CZ?
That's the thing. We don't know what kind of simulation we're in. So it could be us simulating ourselves, which means that if we die, we just wake up, and that's perfect. That's fantastic. But we could be simulated by a higher dimension being, like how we simulate Super Mario. When he dies, he doesn't get to talk to us. He just vanishes. So we don't know. That's the beauty. Once we know, if we know what kind of simulation it is, it kind of loses purpose. Then if I know that if I die, I'll wake up, then I will not take. Then there's a lot of things I will not take too seriously, or seriously at all. But because we don't know, it makes all the simulation much more meaningful. So we can't. Just because we're in simulation doesn't mean that we don't take things seriously. We still got. So I still work. I still take work very seriously. But I don't take myself too seriously. I don't. I don't think of myself as a really important person and all this other stuff.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's making me think of, it's not simulation theory, but another great one is the 3-body problem, if you want something to read.
Yeah, that's a long read. Yeah, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Boy, it's so much fun talking about this stuff, but this has been great. We will hope to have you back on at some point, and thanks for coming on the podcast, CZ. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dan, and thank you so much, Stacy, for having me. Yeah.